This isn't technically a good 4:30 game because it was a loss, but it was well played, I think, on my part. But mostly it was well played on the 430's part because it bounced so much shit, and you'll see in a minute why I really like this tank and why I say it's quite tough for a medium. So it's Ruinberg. Our team looks decent on paper. Should be easy enough, you would think. I go towards the village where I normally go on my mediums, and Deswa heads into town. Conqueror's coming field with me. That would be not a bad move if our guys in the city weren't so terrible. But he didn't know that at the time, neither did I. So T21 shows up first, gets a shell for his trouble. I'm spotted, but there's no arty to worry about, and I'm fairly sure none of the enemy TDs will be positioned to hit me yet. So IS-3 spotted, driving across the open. I get a shot into him. And now I notice the Pershing on my side. So it's one bounce already from the IS-3. I decide to leave him for now and go deal with the Pershing, since there's nobody really actually blocking it just yet. It crosses the street, giving me a nice broadside shot into it, and it bounces. And then it bounces again. And again, and it's dead. Somebody tagged the IS-3. Deswa goes down in town. He got pretty much deleted. I think the 183 hit him and then the 50B clipped in. So I decide to play risky out in field. Immediately regret this decision, but the T28 scrubs his shot, bounces off my front plate. I don't bounce off him, however, so that's 2 bounces from the T57, 3 bounces. His last shot in that clip finally bends me. If I was in any other medium tank, except possibly the E50M, I would have been dead right there. Those were not bounces off my turret either, those were bounces off my hull. So this isn't like the T62 or the Object 140 where you rely on your turret armor. This tank has hull armor, and it's very effective hull armor at that. Against heavies or TDs that aren't aiming very well or at longer distances, against anything firing heat, and against basically any medium tank, this hull armor is very, very strong. So you can see the AMX 5100 gets a shot through me because he actually knows how to aim. Conqueror rolls up. He could be a problem for me because that 120mm gun is quite powerful. So I try and sideswipe to what extent I can. Wait until he's distracted and manage to put a shot through his lower plate. You can see the Conqueror's lower plate is like absolute butter. That was at quite an extreme angle, it's still panned. So things still look okay for now. We're trading evenly for tanks, we're holding the line in town, holding field, and now we've basically broken through field. Once this 5100 is dead, there's nothing to stop me getting all aggressive up in there or spawn. So Conqueror helps me up with him. T28's still out in the field, so I take a couple of drive-by shots at him. He does turn to face me. He bounces again. Again, I do not. Straight through his front. And so I go to fuck with the T57. Now, unfortunately, we just lost a couple of tanks in town, which leaves the enemy open to cap. We have an IS-8, A5, T95, and a Pershing all positioned where they should be able to get resets. And I don't know how that T57 penned me, I'm not sure. It may have been that I was at such an extreme angle, or like such an extremely narrow angle, he managed to hit the final drive or something. I don't know. I can't see the shell holes where it went in, so I kind of take a big risk here, circling around the back of him. He does reload quite fast. If I didn't have teammates here to help me out with him, or if that shot had missed, I might have actually died. But I actually get away with it. Still have just shy of 350 hit points. Pop the Wheezy through the wall. So I did throw away a lot of hit points there on that T-57, but you can see just how many shots I've been able to tank this match so far in my tier 10 medium. So at this point, the enemy team are capping out. I have to drive into a bad position here with the Conqueror, who gets wiped out by the 183. I know the Wheezy 120 will flank me sooner or later, but I have to position here to try and get resets, because the guys on Axial Road are incompetent. So get kind of hung up here and don't notice the Wheezy until it's too late, and that's the end of me. So now we spectate our colossal failures on Axial Road. RE5 has actually been firing his gun at the very least. Watch this ISU once I switch back to spectating him. So he knows the Wheezy's coming to him. We've told him he should be looking at his map. He should know. It gets spotted. He ignores it. He turns right to the wrong side, stops, and then gets blown up. And then his excuse is that he was tracked, which is plainly bullshit. I mean, we all just saw him turn to the right. He wasn't tracked at any point there. But I guess lying to try and make yourself look like you wasn't fuck up is the dumb thing for bad players this day, or these days. Couldn't turn if tracked, yeah, okay, if you say so. So RE5's caught in a bad position, he can't really do anything from there. And then T95 is kind of screened by the E5 and the Pershing Rex, but it's just not going to be enough. Probably if either I had not thrown away so many hit points to the T-57, or if I'd gone after the Wheezy instead of being so hell-bent on resetting cap, or if Deswa had not been fucked up by the 183, probably we could have won that. But the biggest thing that would have won us that is the rest of our team not being complete garbage. I did my job, Conqueror did his job, Deswa couldn't do his job because he got blown up, but you can see there, 5.6k damage and a hell of a lot of bounced hits, especially from that T-57. I honestly thought when I was caught in front of the T-28 and then him, I thought I was done. But the Object 430 is just so magical that actually T-57s don't particularly worry me in this tank anymore unless they're beside or behind me. If I got a T-57 in front of me and I can wiggle around a bit, he's not going to have much luck against my armor, hull or turret. And that's one of the big selling points of this tank. I think is grossly underrated. Couple things actually I want to say about the Object 430, what got your attention. First of all, the myth circulating about it having 1 degree of gun depression is complete garbage. That is a narrow cone, or not even cone, 2 narrow cones over the rear engine deck in diagonals. Everywhere else it has 5 degrees of depression, same as the T-62A, same as the T-54, same as like 90% of the other Soviet tanks in the game. 1 degree of depression is, ridiculous. The Wheezy 120 and the 121, which have some of the worst gun depression in the game, have 3 degrees of gun depression. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing in the game with less than 3, maybe Arty, with less than 3 degrees of frontal gun depression, let alone sides, rear. So that's bullshit. This thing has the same gun depression as the T-62, it's lower to the ground, so it can actually, shoot quite a bit lower if things get near it. It has the best camo of any tier 10 medium, or of any tier 10 period. It has better camo, actually no, sorry, it doesn't have better camo than an ELC, that's the 416 I'm thinking of. It does have better camo though than a lot of the go-to high-tier scouting tanks, certainly better than a BAT, both stationary and on the move. It has comparable agility to a T-54. It goes the same speed, it's maybe slightly less agile in turning, but it has a very powerful engine, so good power to weight ratio and good traction. decent turret traverse. The big things for this are the lower DPM. It's still very high DPM, it's just lower than the other Soviet mediums. And also its gun handling. So when you turn the tank on its tracks, or when you turn the turret, it blooms out horribly, but actually when you're just driving straight on the move, it's not so bad. It's about T-54 level. Whereas if you turn it, it's almost like you're in a bat, which can be a problem if you're trying to fire on the move at long range. The other Soviet mediums are better for that, but this is better for really getting up and working in people's faces, because they're going to have a lot of trouble with that armor. I think it's a fair trade-off. The turret is, I believe, 248 across most of the front. There are a couple of spots which are flat on, where the stereoscopic rangefinder sits, but they're still 248mm of armor. The roof is kind of thin, the cupolas are okay. I haven't really been penned through the roof a lot. Like, it's overmatchable, but it doesn't really happen. As you can see, because the design of the tank, the engine deck is tiny. This tank is very short, and the turret sits directly in the middle of it. So if you're trying to pop out around a corner for shots, you can't really side scrape, you can't really reverse side scrape, and if you battleship, you're exposing over half of your tank just to get your gun on somebody. So it's not real good for corner fighting. Unless, of course, you can actually side scrape out enough that all they see is your front armor, which is very, very thick. Now, talking about the front armor, the frontal upper plate is 120. I can't remember the exact angle, but it's very, very steeply angled. The lower plate, also 120, also very steeply angled. And then the shoulder plates here, you can't really see it that well. If I could open Waller Tanks Viewer and keep a constant recording, I would, but there's like a triangular diamond-shaped corner, triangular on each side. It's 40mm, so it's not very thick, but it is so well sloped, almost everything that hits it bounces. So this is a very, very, very solidly armoured tank. Also, as with the Object 140, the top part of the hull over the tracks is angled inwards, same as the IS-3, and I believe the IS-7. It doesn't have spaced armour there, I don't think, but it is very, very steeply angled inwards. So that gives you a little extra there. The hull is also quite shallow, like you've got a lot of space between the hull and the ground, so shots will quite often go under the tank. There's some angles on the engine deck, but I wouldn't expect it to bounce much. Overall, this is just such a well-protected medium. The E50M has better armour on the hull, but it doesn't have these bullshit corners. It doesn't have the angled overhang, and it certainly doesn't have the turret. The E50M, much like a regular E50, if you're having trouble penning the hull, just shoot the turret face and you'll pen it every time with a high-tier tank. This thing, no such luck. It has really, really good frontal turret armor. The sides and rear are a bit weak, but the front is just excellent. And because it's so small, so well hidden, and it has that bullshittium armor and agility, I find myself bouncing all kinds of things that you should never ever bounce in a medium tank. I would absolutely recommend this tank to anybody. I think that it might not be a, so-called meta tank, it might not be popular for clan wars. It should be, because of its spotting capabilities, but it is a really, really strong pub tank, and I will bring this thing solo pub into tier 10s without too many concerns, whereas my other tier 10s I'm scared to queue up at all, unless I got a platoon. This thing is just a monster, and if you know how to play it, and if you know how to abuse the terrain, because keeping in mind this thing's very low to the ground, a lot of maps, like those craters there, I could hide almost my whole tank in them. The craters on Swamp, I can hide my whole tank in them. If you know the terrain and you know this tank, you're going to have a very, very good time.